Hello everyone, this is Wolfie of Mistforge, and this will be the beginning part of my patch overview regarding hero balancing. In the first video I made on this channel, I did go over what I consider to be very vital points in their changes, but this time I want to elaborate on what's happened and where those heroes are now based on those changes. Now it's important to keep in mind that a lot of these will be based on my own personal opinions and experiences. There will be some things where I ask outside people, but for the most part everything I say will be based on numbers and theory crafting. Now without any further waiting, let's jump into the first batch of heroes I've classified under supports. I was tempted to not put Ashton under this list for the fact that some people like myself like to play her as more of a bruiser slash fighter than a support. Ashton at her roots is a support and many players utilize her in that way. The first thing I want to talk about is the Ghostly Might upgrade. This is a tier 1 upgrade on her focus ability that causes Ashton's left mouse button to deal 10% more damage while Khador is in the blade, and Khador himself gains a 10% bonus damage output on all abilities. Two major bugs were fixed here. One where Khador would not get the damage bonus, and the other being where Ashton's Spectral Wave upgrade would not receive the bonus damage. This to me puts Spectral Wave in a weird place because despite me not liking it at all, it's a pretty solid upgrade and gives Ashton some pretty reliable range damage. I'm not 100% sure how many people combine Ghostly Might with Spectral Wave, but I'm certain some people will be trying it out now. Another thing about Ghostly Might is that you will need to summon another instance of Khador for it to take effect. This has always been a little pet peeve of mine just because I don't fully understand why you have to create another Khador just for him to have a damage bonus. Like, is it coded that Khador doesn't gain his own buffs unless he's fully reset? And how is it any different than say Nasus giving his allies a damage buff with Mighty Op? It's like having to reboot your computer once a Windows update finishes. You don't want to because it's inconvenient, but you have to or you won't get it. Upgrades like Khador's defenses and Khador's restoration work in the same way, as does a couple upgrades with Grizelda's hands, but I'll get into that in a minute. I mean, maybe it's just me, but it seems so inconvenient that you have to reset Khador just for your upgrades to take effect, especially when recalling him puts your summoning spells on an 8-second cooldown at minimum. Into the Blade got a couple fixes as well, the best one being where recalling right before Khador died would double the cooldown of the spell. 32 seconds is a long time in this game, so this fix was definitely needed. An interesting change with this ability is now the interaction when Khador dies. The patch notes read specifically, when Khador is killed he will now return to Ashton's Blade and grant her the Into the Blade benefits, but will also stun her briefly. Now to me this sounds like Ashton is supposed to gain a free cast of her E ability, but apparently that's not the case. You do not gain the base 100 heal and you do not get any upgrade bonuses like Shielding Presence or Ardent Blade. The only thing you actually get are the 10 armor and your faster attack speed. And not to say that I don't think this is balanced because no one should gain a free cast buff for letting their pet die, but it is misleading. What's your guys' opinion though? Do you think Ashton should gain a heal, armor, and upgrade benefits in exchange for a mini stun and all abilities on cooldown or not? Finally, Terrify can now be cast at range again. Veterans would know that Ashton's original focus caused both her and Khador to release an energy wave and knock people away, but I think this is a nice middle ground. Ashton can still stick back while using Khador to scatter everyone, and can be a good way to counter engage or push someone back into the team. It's like having a Grag Assault with an added slow and weakness, and it's also helpful in repositioning Khador. All in all, I would say Ashton is in a better place than she has been for a little while with these little fixes here and there, and with Khador being more reliable with his movements. I still believe that most players will run Spectral Wave into Spectral Defense since it's basically a free permanent 30 bonus armor to Ashton's ally of choice, but I'll still be running my Bruiser Ashton build until it stops working for me. Once more players understand how she works and can fit into comps, we might see her a bit more. Grizelda is another one of those heroes that's an odd flex of support and damage and apparently engage with this new hyped rise of slap build Granny, but again at her core Grizelda was meant to be a support hero. Nothing was really changed about the Portal Beasts themselves aside from a bug fix that sometimes caused the Beast Friend specialization talent to not lower the summon speed. I'm still under the impression that like Khador, Grizelda's hand should be able to actively update with her selected upgrades. Bestial Aura and Bestial Feast are two of her most popular upgrades, but they don't take effect until you summon another hand, and I don't think it's really fair that every other hero has active upgrade effects. The closest exceptions are Beckett and Amani with rocket and bolt upgrades, but it's not like their ammunition would magically change when it's already locked into the firing mechanism. With such a reliance on their summons and being tagged a summoner hero, why do you need to jump through so many hoops to gain all your benefits? Rant aside, Grizelda's only other change is that the Shattering Rift upgrade on a Rift Zone now hits every target as it was intended to do. This used to be a bug where the large zone wouldn't armor break everyone unless you got the zoned out specialization talent. This in combination with the fact that Grizelda is currently the only hero with a tier 1 armor break upgrade could be a big reason why all the current Granny players are running phase variants in the slap build. It's not like it's difficult to summon a hand and quickly proc a large AoE armor break, throw in a couple slaps for good measure, and then pop away into your hidey hole. In fact, numerically speaking, putting together Grizelda's defensive and healing upgrades make her a better regen tank than Paco. Not to mention that Touch of the Master grants the ability for Grizelda to heal her own hands, which has always been a big complaint. Now with all that in mind, does this put her in a good place? It's really hard to say because I wouldn't claim her to be overpowered. I would say that she definitely has one of the highest skill caps in the game though, but even the best Grizelda players can be dealt with to some extent. I do think that the amount she can heal herself with her hands is a little too much, but at the same time she's basically useless without them, so why nerf what saves her greatest asset? It's no wonder she's been on such a weird balancing act for the longest time because there's so much involved with her. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Anyone that knows me knows that Sven is my go-to hero and one that I perform best with at a consistent basis, so you can probably assume that I was really happy when the patch notes came out and almost all of it dealt with his healing potential. The Absorption Matrix upgrade on Elastic Ooze now properly gives 10 ticks of healing, but a bug was also fixed where the healing from this upgrade would stack at 100% instead of only 10% with other heals. Now this is funny to me because I always thought Absorption Matrix was overrated anyway, but had I known about this bug, I probably would have been using it this whole time. I'll still prefer Stick to You into Perfect Pitch just because I still feel like we're in this Death Ball clump up and protect mid creatures meta and use Double Dose and Precision Prescription to do my extended healing. Speaking of Absorption Matrix and Precision Prescription, they still don't seem to like each other since there's a bug where their healing gets reduced to only 25 a tick instead of 52. Not sure how that works, but needs to get fixed even though the two upgrade trees basically serve the same purpose. On the other tree of Healing Waters, Persistent Purgative's duration was reduced from 6 seconds to 4 seconds. This puts him at the same Purify duration as Ashton, but 4 seconds is still a very long time for total immunity against heroes like Taito, Charnock, and Zenobia. Personally, I think 3 seconds will be fine and it would open up the left half of the upgrades to be more desirable. The Potent Medicine specialization talent now properly increases the healing output of Healing Waters and all upgrades associated with by 15%, supposedly. It's still not clear whether or not it's only supposed to amplify the base ability, but it's a welcome change regardless. And lastly, the Sustained Abilities upgrade was replaced with Focused Healing, which grants Sven 20% bonus healing power after using his focus until he dies. This makes both upgrade trees on his focus very good and flexible for whatever build the player wants. Amity will always be very strong, and even Elusiveness has its uses, but at the same time Enthusiasm and a Chaos Theory or Powerful Chemistry can work well with an aggressive Sven. And truth be told, this is what I want to see more of, an actual trade-off for a skill when you choose one path over the others, instead of some heroes who always run one path most of the time like Gnosis with Pierce. Now that I really look at it, it's no wonder that most of the higher tier players claim that Sven is the best support in the game. I mean, think about it. He's got good bursts and sustained healing with Absorption Matrix, provides immunity to debuff heroes and durability to burst heroes with Persistent Purgative and Bounces Off Me. His Elastic Ooze provides the best mobility in the game for every hero, and on top of that he's got an armor crack, solid burn damage with Fire Flask, and a large AoE silence with his focus. I'm not even mentioning things like increased healing talents or amity, nor the fact that he is somewhere around 1900 health. As much as I don't want Sven to be nerfed, he might actually need something toned down somewhere. Vadasi didn't really get anything changed in this patch since her rework was in the patch before this one, but she is definitely still very strong when played correctly, and there are still things worth mentioning about her. So for bug fixes, 2 upgrades on Divine Min were touched on. Cleansing Wind now actually cleanses debuffs from Vadasi, which is always helpful when dealing with enemies targeting you, and Divine Fury no longer grants bonus damage to abilities other than Smite. For a minute I was confused about this because Smite is the only direct way to deal any damage as Vadasi, but then I remembered about Light of Judgment and it all made sense. What I really want to talk about though is the Spiritual Refreshment specialization talent. This causes Devotion to grant Vadasi 25 stamina, which is a free dodge on any number of orb summons. During class, she also sacrifices no health for her 3rd orb. This in combination with Resolute Sacrifice causes her to regain a full quarter of her stamina bar for only 200 health instead of what would normally be 450 with Resolute Sacrifice or 650 without it on a 6-second cooldown. Honestly, that alone really needs to be looked at. You're reducing the health cost by over half, you're giving Vadasi 50% uptime on a 50 armor bonus because of Sanctuary, which you should always be getting because I still believe it's one of the best upgrades in the game, and a free dodge on top of all that? This is why I don't understand why all these Vadasi builds are running Divine Light. A free dodge is far more valuable than increased self-healing when you don't even need the healing that much since you're already taking next to no damage for a 9-second double healing and damage buff. And if you really still need more healing, you can run Foment of Prayer, which heals for more anyway and gives a movement speed boost and builds into a Peel or Cleanse at tier 2. I apologize for ranting, but Vadasi still needs to be looked at and toned in so many places. Her mechanics really aren't that complicated. A somewhat decent Vadasi can carry games because she outheals any single damage dealer and she can cover her own weaknesses. Poison is not enough anymore because she has access to 3 upgrades that can cleanse, and even after her damage nerf, she can still pack a punch and turn on a pesky pursuer long enough for her team to help her. Mutiga, please, I beg you, please do something about Vadasi. Zenobia, the support who only heals herself and instead provides the widest range of debuffs in the entire game. She didn't get too much change in this patch, but she's still the queen of crowd control and a real nightmare in the right hands. The only thing truly noteworthy in the patch notes themselves is that Cursed Soul now works correctly. For whatever reason, enemies would be in stasis for only 4 seconds regardless of which tier focus she had on cast. This may have been one of the longest running bugs in the game because no one really knew whether if it was an actual bug or if it was working correctly and the ability text had to be changed. It was like this for possibly up to an entire year, so I'm glad they finally made a decision and fixed it. One of Zenobia's bigger changes is connected to the weakness debuff. Now her base Wave of Sorrow is a 4-second 25% damage reduction when it was previously only 10%, and the same applies to her Withering Gaze upgrade on her left mouse button. Withering Gaze into Sap Strength now caps at 50% damage reduction over a 3-second channel instead of only 25%, which is actually a pretty huge difference. And being on a beam ability, it's incredibly reliable as well. Zenobia is also one of the heroes who was buffed dramatically with the stamina overhaul. Before, it felt more like a waste to throw all your spells at once, even though most of them combo well together because you'd spend over half your stamina doing so. Now that her abilities are free, she can cripple the enemy team without spending much of anything. The insult and injury specialization talent could be considered broken because of this. With Words of Spite being on such a short cooldown already, it's laughably easy to trigger resets on your own, and even more so when your team picks off a target with you. In a big fight, Zenobia can cast 3 or even 4 waves and marks if her team gets kills, and for no stamina cost every time. Perhaps an interior cooldown is in order? Despite all this, I would still say Zenobia is only slightly overtuned. She has her strengths, but they don't overpower her flaws. She is still very squishy and requires coordination with the team because there's only so much she can do by herself. Granted, in a one-on-one fight she could probably win every time unless she got completely outplayed, but that's a very specific scenario that's not bound to happen with how quickly fights break out over objectives. If you think about it, Zenobia is like the equivalent of Overwatch's Sombra, and I'm not saying that because they're both purple. Their playstyles revolve around being a nuisance, scattering and crippling the enemy team, and supporting in a non-traditional aggressive way. Despite having different kits, both can pull off amazing things and are self-reliant and efficient, but it's not oftentimes you'll see success without informing your team where you are and what you're doing and when. But does that mean Zenobia is balanced? Probably not. If anything, I think she just needs another look over. That'll bring this video to an end. Leave comments below on what you think about the support heroes right now, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Also, Mistforge is now on Patreon. If you want to help in the creation and expanding process of the website, please click on the screen or in the link in the description. Any and all donations and support will be greatly appreciated. Stay tuned for another Hero Balance video on the melee fighters in the near future. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and we'll see you on the airship.